All right, guys. I'm your host, Tom Caffarella. Welcome back to another edition of the Asian Investor Podcast. I've got Kyle Craig. Like we had talked about, Kyle, you're one of the first people who I've ever had locally in my market. And we were talking a little bit about what you've done on the investment side. And you mentioned Braintree. And I'm like, wait a second, Braintree, Mass? And yeah, so for those of you who know me, I'm in the greater Boston market and Kyle is as well. So Kyle, I want to get started with kind of like your story about how you got involved in real estate to kind of begin with.
Okay, yeah, great. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Mhm.
So yeah, it started probably about, I would say 3.5 years ago. I've always been interested in real estate, properties, investing, all that stuff. But I had a couple of really solid mentors growing up, all of which are very, very heavily involved in real estate and investing, developing, all that fun stuff. And it just, I caught the bug 3.5 years ago, bought a place in Rockland, two family investment property. And I lived in it very, very briefly. But since then, I've had renters in there, and I realized how solid of an investment it really would be when everything was getting paid for with the mortgage, and then also getting some proceeds after the fact. It was a real solid investment. So I got my license to practice real estate actually probably about a year ago now,
Mhm.
and it's been a great experience thus far. But you mentioned the property in Braintree. Just closed on that in the end of June 25th. We closed. Nice two family over near, if you're familiar with Braintree, over near the Hollis Elementary School. Great little neighborhood over there. It's going to be another really solid investment property. I'm very excited about it. But yeah, that's pretty much the timeline. I've been very interested in it for sure for a long time, but yeah, put the foot to the pedal about 3.5 years ago.
So at what age, I mean, you said you kind of, did you say you like grew up in the business? Like who in your family was involved in the real estate business?
So I have a cousin that he was heavily involved in. He was buying a lot of I'd say probably single family homes around the Brockton area, Brockton, Easton, that area. He bought a ton probably starting about 20 years ago, and just accumulated a real solid portfolio. And by the time I got out of college in like 2014, I gravitated toward him because I realized the success he's had. He has a wealth of knowledge. I would really learn a ton from him in just a 5-minute conversation. So that relationship blossomed from that point on, and he's been a really great mentor from that point on. And he's involved heavily in development now. So his path is his trajectory is in a very, very high astronomical level right now. So he's a good guy to be able to call at any moment's notice. Yeah.
Nice. So you graduating in 2014, and it sounds like so you didn't jump right into real estate. What did you do before real estate?
Sales. So very similar, same field, but I did sales. I did pharmaceutical sales. I did medical device sales, IT sales. It's one of those things where being a salesperson certainly helps with the position. It allows you to be versatile with your conversations with different people, allowing you to really blossom different relationships and make sure you understand kind of what the other person really needs,
Mhm.
not kind of what you want them to need. It's more so what they need, get what they're actually hoping for, and move forward in a really efficient manner. Yeah.
Cool. So you did that for a while, and then what made you decide? I mean, I know you said that you have, your cousin who's actively involved in the business, and that got your wheels turning. But like for you, what kind of made the decision for you to go into real estate?
So it was the day after I closed for my house in Rockland. It was a two family in Rockland, and the day after I closed, I looked at the closing disclosure, and
Mhm.
I go, wow, okay, so that's what the agents make, and
Yep.
what's it take to become an agent? What's it take to get the licensing? How much studying is involved? I went through the whole process and realized I don't really know any real estate agents that are like friends of mine, colleagues. I mean, the real estate agent I worked with on that deal was a friend, don't get me wrong, but someone that is my age, someone that's in my circle of friends. So I realized this is a huge opportunity to really make some money here. At the same time, if I'm able to really become a master of this field, really help people both close to me, people in my family, friends. I mean, it's something that it's a really, really powerful tool, having a license in real estate, and I'm certainly taking advantage of it.
So that first deal that you did, it's a two family. in a pretty decent town. Was that something that you bought completely as an investment, or do you live in one of the units as well?
I lived very, very briefly in that unit. So I bought it. Basically, it was a two-family. It was a really solid price. It had been sitting for a long time. I had been watching it for about 100 days. This is back 3.5 years ago. So obviously the market's a lot different back then. It doesn't seem that long ago now, but at the same time, it was very different than now. So I got the price I wanted, the purchase price I wanted. I was able to pull the trigger on it. And then day one, I lived in it for about, probably about a month while I was renovating. And then I found a tenant to come in and really allow for a real solid situation when it came to the finance situation, the
Now,
investment.
now, how did you learn like whether it would be a good investment? I guess back it up for a second. So you lived in there temporarily. Was
Yep.
that your objective like on day one was just to live in there temporarily, or did you say like I'm gonna live in here and help pay the mortgage?
It was this latter, the latter of that. So I realized based off of what the monthly payment was going to be, I boiled it all down to that. I was very close with the lender that I had used, and I wanted to make sure that the monthly payment co-aligned with what I was going to be earning for the rental. So with that being said, I was only looking at, while I lived there, for about $1,000, like $1,200 to live in a home that I had just purchased. That was a no-brainer for me. Instead of renting a property for $1,500 and not having money go to any equity or anything along those lines, I'm able to have someone else help me pay for that equity. So while I was in there for about a month, I was also thinking, as I was renovating, okay, I can get someone else in here too. And
Yep.
then on top of what I'm paying for the mortgage and paying down the mortgage and the equity and whatnot, I'm also able to make a little bit of money so that if there's any unforeseen things that do come up, say for instance, like the heating and the plumbing going, I have that money in the rear to be able to pay for it and not come out of my my revenue that's generated from my profession. So it seemed like a really, really solid situation, and it turned out to be just that. Knock on wood, no major things had happened with that property. Still haven't. I'm in the process of converting it from oil to gas, which can be a little pricey, but at the same time, it allowed me to be able to balance different things. It's somewhat of a balancing act, but at the same time, once you become very familiar with it, you want to get the next one right away. So I had that bug. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, so it sounds like you were cash flow positive, like right out of the gate after
Day
those,
one.
yeah, day one. Now, again, you went into it not thinking you were gonna do that, right? You went into it thinking you were gonna live there. So like at what point, I mean, I guess it was just immediately that you realized that you just, saw it as an investment, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be completely honest. So when I bought the property, I realized what the cash flow could be. I was
Yep.
naive enough to be like, oh, you know what? I think I can buy another one like right away because I had some capital left over. But at the same time, the buying power wasn't fully there. So I had to wait and accumulate more money, more funds, and be able to make sure that the revenue coming in was high enough where a bank would allow me to purchase another one. It took about 2.5, 3 years to be able to do that.
Yeah, so like, we talk a lot in this show about people having like hesitations about getting into investing or pulling the trigger on their first deal. Like, did you have any hesitations about doing that? Or was it like as simple as, wow, like I could live here, I could live cheaper, and it was just like boom, and you were done and you were ready to do it?
Yeah, I mean, some of the best advice that I got from my cousin, my mentor. One of the things he said was, and it always plays back in my head: you can never go wrong buying a house as an investment property. You're never going to lose money,
Mhm.
and that gave me some comfort in the whole process. Now, definitely had some hesitation, but at the same time, the more research I did, the more numbers I produced, I realized this is a great investment, and in 30 years or however long it takes me to pay off the property, it's going to be a cash flow. And I'm going to have this huge bulk piece that I'm not going to have to rely on a retirement fund from a 401k. This is my retirement fund. I'm looking at it. It's a functionable, useful tool that I could also live in too. So, I mean, that's the way I looked at it. There was a little bit of hesitation. I feel like that's normal with anybody, especially first time home buyer. But at the same time, it's worth it. It's worth it. You should do it. If you have the funds to be able to pull the trigger, do it. And go through the whole process full steam and learn as much as you possibly can. Read every contract, read everything you could possibly do about the property, about the whole process, and you'll come out on the other end wanting to buy another one.
And so I'm assuming, so you did that with like a low down probably type of program, right?
Very low. Yeah, I did FHA. I used FHA at the same time. I actually did a 203K loan, which is a whole different story. Rehab loan that it ended up rounding out to about $30,000 worth of a loan, which I would have rather had in my savings account. In the case that maybe I was able to buy another property
Mhm.
at the time. Like I said, I was a little naive about that, but I learned. But the 203K loan helped a lot because I got a new roof on the property. Had to do a lot of different things like the back egress cost a lot of money, little niche things that needed to be done for FHA standards. And it worked out really, really solid in my favor. I put, I think, 3.5% down. And yeah, I refinanced out of that about a year and a half ago, and the rates, it's ridiculous. I mean, I love it. It's a real solid investment right now, and knock on wood, no major issues. And like I said, on to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real simple example, but at the same time, like, it's something that a lot of people don't take the first step to do. So, you did it with a little money down. You did a 203K loan. And I know a lot of agents that are on the call probably know what a 203K loan is. Um, but did that allow you, because there's two different things, like when we're talking about investing, like there's like the fix and flip model that I do a ton of, where you need to get like such a discount on a home in order to make money. And
Mhm.
then there's the buy and hold, where like it sounds like to me, and it was 3 years ago, the market was a little bit different, but it was still hot 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So the fact that it needed work, did that allow you to get a deal on it?
Yeah, it was one of those things where I have a few different things that I do as a real estate agent, especially now for my clients. But I gravitate toward the properties that have been sitting for a while. I'm curious about them. I wonder why have they been sitting? What's the matter with them? Are there certain loopholes that just need finessing? There are different areas that maybe my niche type of sales experience and also networking ability, could I get through those areas in order for my client or myself to be able to purchase the property at a much more discounted price? So that's one of my approaches. At the same time, I feel like right now, with different properties, I tell all my clients the same thing. If you're looking at single family homes, I mean, it's obviously, everyone knows it's a very hot market. I feel like with multifamily homes, there's plenty that are still out there that could be really, really solid income drivers. And I mean, there's still some really good deals out there. And I tell a lot of my clients that I've worked with now 5 different closings in the past 6 months that have been somewhat of an investment property. So I mean, it's a real solid market out there, I think, for investment properties as well. So yeah.
So you talked about like quickly the fact that you did a 203K, and you kind of like alluded to some things that I guess maybe weren't great about it, or that, for you, it didn't work maybe as good as you thought. Like, what were the issues that you had there?
With the 203K loan, it was one of those things where I didn't do enough research on it. I can easily admit that. I wish I did a little bit more research. I wish I knew how much it cost to actually pull that rehab loan off, how much you're actually paying the bank rather than what you're putting into the house. So I think I ended up paying about like 6 grand or like 7 grand more for the actual rehab loan to take place. And then on top of that, I also had to pay the money for the mortgage and the increase of whatever I was putting into the house. So that being said, I had the amount of money that I ended up using for the 203K loan. I had that in my savings account. I kind of wish I used that cash instead, because obviously the mortgage would have been a little bit lower, and I would still have a decent amount of money left in my savings account from that $6,000 to $7,000 that I actually paid for the 203K loan to actually occur. So yeah, it's some hesitation toward that. If I could replay it, maybe I would have done that, but at the same time, it all worked out. Um, and it turned out a really, really solid way. And you need a good contractor. The contract is a big piece too. So
Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess like for somebody else that's considering doing a 203, like what advice would you give them?
I would say if you can get a really, really solid discount on a home that needs a ton of work, and then also at the same time, just try to get a contractor that you're networked with, that you trust. Try to get them to be able to give you a solid idea, solid estimate as to how much work needs to be done. And then factor that into the mortgage. Have your lender, whoever that is, talk to them, work out a monthly payment, what it would look like if you actually move forward with that property, purchase it, and then also put all of that money from the 203K loan into it. And then try to figure out from there if you're going to be able to pay that monthly mortgage and also have a decent lifestyle to match that. At the same time, if it's an investment property, multifamily, make sure that that rent that you would expect to come in is going to cover whatever you're needing it to cover.
Mhm.
I feel like that's pretty important.
So you were able to buy that property for very little money down, put a little bit of money into it. It appreciated, and you said you were able to get all your money back out.
So I still own that property. It's one of those things where it's when I refinanced it, it the monthly payment drastically dropped. It went from I had a 4,375 and I forget what I even got. It's much lower than that now, but the
Mhm.
monthly payment's fantastic. The revenue coming in beyond what the mortgage payment is per month is really solid. It allows me to free up a lot of home repairs and stuff that needs to be done. But I didn't end up pulling any of the money back. It's more so I was able to accumulate more savings throughout that course of time
Mhm.
prior to purchasing the new property that I just purchased.
Okay. And what are you cash flowing now per month roughly on that first deal?
For okay, the first property cash flow right around like $700 a month,
That's
which is
awesome.
for 3.5 years is actually really, I mean, I love it. It's a really solid setup. And anytime my tenants give me a call, I'm able to go right over there and use money from that investment to be able to put it right back into the house and accommodate whatever they need.
And so are you self-managing?
Yes, I'm self-managing at this point. I look at it with my timeline, at least my goals. By the time in the next 3 years, I hope to have at least two, maybe three more.
Mhm.
When I hit the five property mark, I feel like it's going to be a situation where maybe I should hire somebody,
Yep.
or maybe get someone like in my family involved, so I can keep it in house. But yeah, I have some solid plans for that as well. But it's just me at this point.
Yeah, and a lot of people like that's another hesitation they have is like managing the property. So
Mm.
from your experience, I'm making the assumption that you've never like managed before. Like, has it been like a pretty good like easy process, or has it been like something that you're like dying to give over to somebody else at this point?
Um, it's really good. I'm very very fortunate with my tenants. I have awesome tenants. I honestly I hear some horror stories, unfortunately, from different landlords, but from my perspective, my experience, I've had a really solid one thus far. Now, one of the things I could recommend to any of your listeners is if you're going through the process of actually purchasing that home, that multifamily, and there are tenants currently in there, if you have an opportunity to get a quick conversation with them and feel them out a little bit, I feel like that's important. At the same time, try to get an idea of what they've actually paid. Try to get some evidence that there is money coming in, and that everything's pretty much on time and stuff. And I feel like a lot of the times, if you're doing like a 20% down or something along the lines where you don't have to live there and it's just strictly an investment property, I mean, you can have really solid ground as to knowing what to expect moving forward, whether or not it's
So
going to be an issue.
so you bought that property, you saw what the agent made, and you were like, I got to get my license. Um,
Yeah, pretty much.
Now, did you jump? I mean, did you decide to like continue to work your full-time job and be an agent at the same time, or did you like decide, hey, I'm just going to go all in and take the leap? Like, what did you do from there?
So for me, I'm trying to think how long it took, but pretty much it would probably, I would say, 2 to 3 months following that close. I'm like, let's figure this out. Like, let's figure out how to start the process. I had a colleague at work, at my job over in Canton, and he was doing both. He was doing real estate. He was also doing the IT sales. So I figured, okay, let's rely on him for some information. He was really really great guy. He was able to tell me kind of whole process, going into the classes, doing the 40 hours, getting that whole process done. I ended up going to the class, doing it in 2 weekends, 10 hours per day, Saturday, Sundays. And it actually took a while for me to actually get the license passed, mainly because right after that test, I studied the book that was given to me. It was like thick. It was pretty thick, but it was a lot of information. I knew the book like the back of my hand. I'll be completely honest. Knew it like the back of my hand. Was very very confident going into that exam, and took the federal and the state. with the PSI exams and passed the state, failed the federal by 2 questions. Now, the federal, it's not, I try to tell as many people as possible, the more studying, the more quiz taking, practice tests, that type of stuff, it's so important because the book isn't everything. And I kind of treated it like it was just the book. Long story short, it took me, after feeling that, about another year of being like, okay, let's figure this out. I don't want those 40 hours to expire. I don't want to waste the money that I just spent on these classes, and started studying again. Except this time around, it was a lot of practice tests, a lot of quizzes, podcasts, anything I could possibly do, even when I was like driving, to get stuff going in my subconscious about kind of what was going to be on the test, and ended up passing, and yeah, hit the ground running from there.
So did you go directly full time at that point, or?
It wasn't completely full time. No. I'm doing the other job, and it's solid with management, and it takes time to be able to do both, but at the same time, it's 100% doable. 100% doable. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you got your first investment deal underway, and then at the same time, you're building up your agent clientele, and then you ended up buying another investment property. So how are you juggling all this stuff kind of at the same time?
It's fun. It's fun. It's a fun juggle. It's a fun problem. I mean, I shouldn't say problem, but it's a fun issue to have. Being able to actually see your money work for you after actually closing on a property, and taking that money that you earned through the commission and putting it into an investment property that you just saw your client successfully close on. So it's a real cool process. But it's time management. You got to put in the hours, and the more you get used to the process and you understand the process, the more knowledgeable you are, the easier it is to balance everything. That's how I look at it. If you're going to go in kind of half in, half out, it's going to be difficult, because there's a lot going into it, and you got to understand the whole process. If you don't, then there's going to be a lot of snags on the way in there. So you want to read as much as you can. You want to focus on as much as you can as far as investing and buying and selling and all that stuff. Pay attention.
So would you say you're like plugged in all the time?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, pretty much all the time. I just tried taking a vacation to Mexico 2 months ago, and it was very, very difficult. I wanted to leave my phone back, and I couldn't, because I had 2 deals in the works under agreement. One was closing at the moment while I was there, and I also had my deal. Mm-hmm. So there was 3 deals going. It can be chaotic at times, but it's fun. It's fun.
So it sounds like, I mean, maybe an understatement, because you kind of said it a few times, but after you did your first investment deal, you almost immediately wanted to do another, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, right when I got that done, I'm like, this wasn't that bad. This really wasn't that bad. And I feel like once you go through that process, and if you're like, you have so much knowledge from the whole process, it can take anywhere from 2 to 4 months. Mine was super sloppy. That Rockland one, and it had nothing to do with my agent. It had nothing to do with the attorneys. It was more so the person that was selling it. There was some little things like a breach of contract. I don't need to get into it. It wasn't anything too crazy, but when I came out on the other end, I was unscathed, and I had a lot of knowledge from the process. So I wanted to take that and be like, okay, let's make this useful again right away, and make it a breeze going through the next one. And then I realized I didn't have the buying power right away, so I had to wait.
Okay, so what did you do? So you kind of immediately wanted to do your next deal, and what was the strategy that you took in order to get that next deal? Like, did you do anything like other than just save up money, or was it just a matter of saving up money for your next deal?
More revenue streams. I just tried to find more jobs, more opportunities to make some more money, savings, investments, whatever I could possibly do to get more cash on hand, so I could have more buying power. At the same time, whatever revenue is going to be coming in, like I coach hockey at the same time. It's fun. That's actually my outlet, but I get paid at the same time. So that would add to my revenue power. At the same time, there were other things that would pop in that I can make some extra money on. So I focused on income. That was huge, just because that allows you to have more buying power and more options. Mm-hmm. And then also I didn't use it, but I had the equity in the first investment property to be able to use if I wanted to. Mm-hmm. It just turns out I didn't have to right away.
Awesome. So, and is that something in the future that you might tap?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, yeah. I think I'm at 20, like 25% right now, equity. So I can definitely utilize it. I was actually thinking about using it for the place I just bought in Braintree, but I was able to pull it off without having to tap that yet. But I have a few different investments that are on the horizon. Actually, one with my cousin. It's actually down in Brockton. He's amazing. He's a very, very solid developer. He's got a lot of things going, and I'll probably be using some of that capital to jump into the next deal with him, because it's definitely going to be a successful one regardless.
Nice. So your second deal, was that another one that you found on the MLS? Like, how did you find that deal? What did that deal look like?
Yeah, that was definitely a little bit different, more so because I knew it was a property that I was going to be living in, and staying there for quite a bit of time, whether it's 2 years, 4 years, whatever. It's at least going to be 2 years living in this one. So I knew the market right now was pretty hot and the prices was pretty high. At the same time, Braintree is a town where people pay a premium to live there. Taxes are lower. It's a beautiful town. There's a lot to do in the town. Tons of resources. It's a really solid area to buy. That being said, you're paying a premium for that. So this property was a little bit different. My first one was in Rockland. It was a lot different of a situation, where Rockland, you can get a little bit better of a deal because it's a little bit further away, I would
Yeah.
say. But yeah, so the one in Braintree, it was a situation where I loved the property. It was much larger than the first one. I knew I was going to get much more cash flow. People want to live in Braintree a lot. I shouldn't say a lot more, but more so than Rockland, just based off of their job. If they work in, say, Boston, for instance, it's right near the T. So I knew it was going to be really solid for any tenants that are going to be living there that need to get into Boston if they don't want to drive. And I just love the house. To be honest, I love the house. The neighborhood's beautiful. And the surrounding homes, if you go up like that past the area where it is, they're all $1 million homes. So it's a really, really beautiful area, and I think it's a really solid investment. So yeah, so it was a little bit different the second time through, but same idea.
And how many units is it?
It's just two units. Yeah, up and down.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, you started your career, you're doing sales, you're coaching hockey, you're doing all these things, right? Obviously, you're putting in time, effort, and energy. Like, what's your investing and agent plan? Like, where do you want to be, say, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now?
2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. As far as investing goes, I want to have at least 5 properties by the time I'm 35. So I'm 30 now. I turned 31, and I don't even know what the date is. The 5th. I turned 31 on the 12th. So by 35, I want to have at least 5 properties. That's the plan. I feel like I'm on track for that right now, especially with the year I'm having in the real estate. So I would like to just be 100% focused in on investing in real estate at that point. I would say 2 years, maybe 3 years from now. But yeah, I would say 5 years from now, own 5 properties, hire a property management team, and really take the next step into really, really high level commercial real estate, I would say. I have clients that are involved in commercial real estate, and I see what they're doing, and it's some amazing stuff. So I want to get involved in that as well.
So what type of commercial stuff? Like, when people say commercial, like, they talk about all different things. Like, what's kind of, what would you love to be involved in?
So for instance, we just closed, one of my clients, we just closed on a building it's 64 units. It actually used to be a hotel in Brockton. It is amazing, absolutely amazing, but it's deemed residential and commercial. So it has the 64 units, but it also has commercial space as a restaurant down in the basement. I shouldn't say the basement, first floor. It also has like a barber shop going right now. But I feel like with the commercial real estate, if you're able to have kind of both, have a hybrid, the creativity levels through the roof with what you can do with it. I feel like that the conversion, depending on what town you're in, if it's an emerging market, similar to how Brockton is, the leverage you could have working in those areas can be very, very fruitful on both sides. It can be mutually beneficial for everybody involved. So for instance, like that hotel, that's a great idea, great concept. I love what my client's going to be doing with it. At the same time, my cousin, who is also a developer, high level developer, he's got a 24 unit residential spot, but he also has commercial real estate that he's hopefully going to transition into residential units at some point based off of like demolition and also build up. He's got a lot of great plans. So I feel like with the commercial market, you're able to be very, very creative with it. And whether it's turning into residential units, condos, whatever that is, whatever need be, I feel like that's a really solid strategy. But at the same time, there's a lot of open areas. I feel like, especially with COVID happening and all that fun stuff, there's a lot of avenues that you can go with those commercial real estate spots, like whether it's a 2,000 square foot area that could be turned into like a yoga studio or something along those lines. I want to get involved in that as well.
So what's the biggest piece of advice that you could give to an agent who's been doing it for a while, who knows that they should be investing but hasn't yet?
Read more than what you're reading right now, even if you think you're reading too much. Read as much as you can, get as many books in you as possible, learn from people that have done it. I think that's the most important resource you can get. People that have actually done it, people that have failed at doing it. I feel like you learn a lot more from them because obviously you're going to fail going through the process. I mean, I've made plenty of mistakes in the past 3.5 years that I wish I didn't make, but at the same time, you learn from it. But yeah, just read as much as possible. And if you think something's too risky, ask someone that's already done it and then get their take on it before you say no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would read as much as possible. That's what I wish I did before 3.5 years ago.
Any books or Audible or anything that you like have read or listened to lately that you'd recommend for somebody?
Oh man, I mean, Rich Dad Poor Dad. If you're thinking about getting into it, if you're hesitant, read that book. I can't make this up. Actually, my cousin, the one that I've mentioned probably a million times, I love the guy. He's the best. The day I finished, he told me to read that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. The day I finished, I can't make this up. The last page, I finished reading it, and then I drove to Rockland and I closed in the house. So it was weird, the timing, but that's a book that I would highly recommend to somebody that's trying to get into it. I've read Think and Grow Rich. I finished that about a month ago. That was probably the best book I've ever read in my life. That book was amazing. There's a lot of good ones out there. There's a lot of good ones, but those are just two.
Yeah. Rich Dad Poor Dad is like one of the ones that everybody mentions, and I've got a
Rich Bible.
Yeah. So what happened with me? So I grew up in Revere, which some of my listeners might know where it is, but it's basically just an area outside of Boston. Grew up poor. Everybody told me do good in school, get a good job, all that stuff. I was like a straight A student, not because I liked school, but because that's what I thought I needed to do.
Yep.
And I was pre-med because I read in a book that doctors make the most amount of money salaried out of any profession. And I was 3.5 years in to basically like going into medical school. I did everything I needed to do to get in. And I was a pizza delivery boy driving around, and I'd throw in the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It was a cassette tape in my 1999 Kia Sophia. And I'm driving around listening to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And by the time I finished with it, I said, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. I want to get into business and I want to own real estate. And that was like, it was kind of interesting because I've got like a love-hate relationship with the Rich Dad, Poor Dad company, because after I read that book, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do stuff. And I read like 15 other of their books, and there's nothing else in their books other than basically like the motivation piece.
Yeah.
Really teach you. And maybe this has changed, but back then, like this was probably like 2003, 2004. It was just like all that mindset shift stuff. Mm-hmm. And I kept being like, whoa, I got a mindset shift. Okay, I'm done. But like, what do I do next?
Yeah.
Like for me, that was like the thing that like pushed me and propelled me to say, wow, like everything I was told and taught when I grew up isn't really true. Mm-hmm. And then, you start to get around other successful people, like you said, which was one of your other tips. Like you find out that the people that are super successful in business financially are all kind of doing things that are of the mindset of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. So it was definitely a paradigm shift for me. And, I can definitely echo the getting educated stuff because there's a saying that, I always say, the more you learn, the more you earn. And I didn't make it up, but I stole it and I use it a lot. It's definitely true. So
100%.
Cool. Well, you've got a great story. I'm definitely excited to see kind of like what you do in the future. Obviously, you're in my market, so I'll probably bump into you at some point. But I want to thank you obviously for taking the time out to share your information with everybody who's here. And again, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All
Thank
right,
you.
guys. Again, Tom Caffarella, Agent Investor Podcast, will be back next week with another guest. Thank you for tuning in.